So welcome to our panel discussion today. I am Niels Heverkorn. I will be moderating today's panel. I work with Erdetto, and within Erdetto I'm responsible for a gaming division called De Nuvo. And at De Nuvo we develop a range of solutions that, for example, prevent game leakage, for example, of game builds during the development stage. We combat piracy, and we have a whole suite of solutions that protect the integrity of gameplay for our anti-cheat solutions. And it is this latter topic that we will focus with our panel today on. So as we all know, competitive games today operate in an environment where trust is everything. Players need to feel that the match or game they just played, that they lost or won, was fair. And when that trust erodes, it basically affects everything. Player retention, community health, and ultimately the long-term viability of the game itself. At the same time, we also see that the technical landscape around cheating and the exploitation has become incredibly sophisticated. Protecting games today requires a combination of deep system-level protection, advanced detection techniques, and a constant adaptation towards an evolving threat environment. And of course, beyond the technical arms race, and we will certainly address that also today, there is the, let's say, the industry's most delicate challenge. That means navigating community sentiment. Today we'll highlight the crucial balance of maximizing security efficacy while also ensuring an invisible, frictionless experience for legitimate players. So today on our panel, we're very fortunate to have experts who are working on these challenges on the front line more or less every day. So welcome Michael Greshishev, Head of Game Security at Amazon Game Studios. Tom van Dijk, Senior Software Engineer over at Embark Studios. And Andreas Ullman, Head of Product Management, I should say, over at De Nuvo. Now, I've prepared some questions for the panelists today, but obviously at the end of the panel, we'd certainly like to give the floor to you to raise any questions or comments you may have. But to kick things off, I would like to ask each of the panelists to give a short introduction of themselves. And let's start with you, Michael.
All right, thanks so much, Niels. Great to see so many familiar faces in the audience. Always nice to present to friends. My name is Mikhail Greshishev. I'm Head of Game Security at Amazon Games. A lot of our games are MMOs, Throne of Liberty, New World, Lost Ark. So the threats we face are pretty specialized to bots and fraud. Of course, we have our share of cheating as well. So I'm just excited to share a few of our war stories, how we solve these problems, and maybe some takeaways the audience can have for you to solve it in-house yourself. Before Amazon Games, I was at Ubisoft. I'm pretty proud of some novel anti-cheat solutions that came up with, like Mousetrap to capture mouse and keyboard players on console, and then our few user mode security solutions to catch aimbots and the like. And with that, I'll hand it off to Tom for his intro.
Right. So I'm Tom. I'm at Embark Studios right now, formerly at EA and Blizzard and Sony and stuff like that. I currently work on the anti-cheat efforts for Arc Raiders and the finals, and I'm completely new to this field, so it's been an interesting ride these last couple of years.
All right, and then it's me. So Andy, I'm the product manager at De Nuvo. I'm working in the game security field since 17 years, and the last 12 out of those at De Nuvo, so with the team since the founding. Went through various positions, also an ex-course in the engineering field, but at some point I decided I want to be more on the business side of things, so became product manager there. And yeah, happy to be here today.
All right, thank you guys. Proper range of experience as you hear. What I want to kick off with is to talk a bit about the technical strategy and the detection, so more or less the how of anti-cheat. Mm-hmm. And the question is, when building an effective defense, how do you decide when to strategically deploy high-efficacy client-side protection, like kernel-level solutions, versus server-side data-driven detection? And Tom, maybe if you can kick that off.
Sure. So for us, because we came into this field kind of not knowing what to do at all, we had no anti-cheat team at all with Embark until obviously for the finals we decided like, we should probably do something. This was before shipping, luckily. So yeah, I mean, for us it's been a very reactive in the beginning. And so, you know, we scoured the forums, we look what's commercially available, look at Discord and Telegram and some secret forums that people are converging into to figure out how to cheat for our games. And so, you know, we download the cheat, we try it ourselves, see what kind of telemetry comes out of that, and then we react to that. And so for us, the solution has always been a little bit like, what is happening right now? And so if it's a server exploit, we fix the server. If it's a client exploit, we do something on the client. And so it's a little bit all over the place. These days, it's a little bit more organized. We've grown to a team of 10 people at least. So, you know, it's been going okay. And, you know, we have some good partners as well. So.
Thanks. Michael?
All right. Thanks, Niels. Thanks, Tom. Niels raised a question of kind of how do you pick client versus server? And I just want to point out that for us, it's never really been a competition between the two because the two solve different problems entirely. So the analogy I like to use for this is like doping in sports. And the server-side part can tell that an athlete's performance is like through the roof and they're doing something sus, but you can't really explain the root cause of it or how they're doing it. So you know they're overperforming and you probably need to investigate. And then the client-side portion, oftentimes it could tell you the client is doing something suspicious, like they took a pill, but you don't know if that pill is like genuine medicine or if it's a performance-enhancing drug. So if you want the complete picture, oftentimes you need both. The server-side analytics will point you to what you need to investigate, and then the client-side forensics would give you the evidence that you need to do something like ban a player or take action against them. Yeah, and I guess the point I'm making is for us, it's never been versus. Like you need both, and you need both data sets to make confident calls.
Yeah, great analogy, and probably when we think about that, and doping in sports, that's obviously a field that is constantly evolving, and that kind of leads to the following question, right? So how does your solution basically evolve to meet the challenges posed by new cheating vectors, ensuring the protection remains effective without impacting the game's core experience? Tom, if you want to kick it off again.
So obviously with our initial lack of experience, initially it was relatively easy to cheat for our games, but you know, now we're 2 years in, we've learned a lot, we've worked with partners to figure out a lot of stuff, and so these days a lot of the cheats we see evolving more towards AI-based pixel bots and DMA devices and stuff like that. So you know, we're moving along, right? We're doing a lot more ML-based telemetry and detections and stuff like that. And ultimately, if we look at what the kernel-level anti-cheat is doing for our games, it only catches about a third of our players as cheaters. And so the rest of all the detections that we're doing are telemetry-based or stuff like that. And yes, you know, keyboard, mouse input and stuff like that. Yeah.
Good, Michael?
So the question was like, how does your solution evolve to meet the challenges posed by new cheating vectors? And I would argue that there's two fronts that are evolving independently of each other. So the first front is on the platform side. So Microsoft has been doing a lot of heavy lifting with providing hardware-backed features like IOMMU and Secure Boot to close off attacks like DMA, and essentially by forcing certain hardware to be available just to even install the operating system, we as anti-cheat teams then also have access to the benefits of that hardware. And over time, the OS is coming more and more locked down to feel more like a console. And as we know, we turn off crossplay if we don't want to play with cheaters because consoles are fairly secure. So Microsoft is slowly converging us in that direction. And I mean, 15 years ago was a wild, wild west. And today is probably the hardest time for cheaters ever. Like as Microsoft is rolling out these platform security features, it's just becoming harder and harder to be and more expensive to be a cheater. So that was the first front. And then the second front is the intelligence front. I think a lot of organizations are starting to realize the power of gameplay telemetry and the fact that a bot doing repetitive tasks or players having suspicious stats is something that Microsoft will never solve for you at a platform level, and that gameplay analytics-based front is evolving more and more. I've genuinely become impressed even what indie devs are doing to solve their cheating problems just by using the data that they already have. So both fronts have to evolve, and in my opinion, they evolve independently.
Super, thank you. Andy?
I totally agree with my fellow speakers here. So anti-cheat and cheating has always been a cat and mouse game. And from back in the days when the cheats were in user mode and anti-cheats were in user mode, cheats went to kernel space, anti-cheat went to kernel space. And currently we see that we are at a stage again where cheaters try to evade kernel space again and try to find new methods like using AI to identify targets on the screen and then do automatic aiming, things like this. Or DMA, what we heard already, DMA devices are getting cheaper, more widely available. And that's the next stage. So also the anti-cheat solutions, of course, have to evolve. Good thing is that's already happening. Most of the anti-cheat solutions are going into this direction. And this is where collecting data comes into play. So data is getting more and more important to take educated decisions to sanction your players who are cheating, of course.
Okay, thanks, Andy. And when we talk about data, and I'd like to move a little bit into more the operational side of anti-cheat systems here. And you mentioned data there, Andy, and I think that raises a question that probably sits with all of us, which is really about measuring success, right? So what are some of the key performance indicators, the KPIs that you guys use to measure the success of a anti-cheat system, and also to measure, let's say, the value of the investment that you're making there. And Tom, if you want to kick that off again.
Sure. So, I mean, we basically look at appeal rates, right? It's like we ban a bunch of users, and then we see how many people are coming back to us complaining about that. And then based on that, we look at game sessions, how many sessions are really affected by those things. But at the end of the day, I think player sentiment for us is the biggest indicator. You know, the discussion on what happens on Discord or on Reddit or anywhere else in the media. If people are having fun, then the discussion is about how much fun they are having in the game. If it's all about like, oh, there's so many cheaters in your game, then that's where the discussion is going, right? And so we actively engage with the community to try and steer some of these discussions a little bit towards more like, hey, you're having a lot of fun in our game, right? And that's kind of where we measure success, I guess.
So the KPI is the fun factor,
Exactly,
let's say. I like that. Okay.
Well, and how many people are really talking about the whole cheating problem, right? If, like I said, it's like if the whole discussion on Reddit is like, oh my God, cheaters, and this game sucks because there's so many cheaters, then yeah, you got to do something about that.
Understood. Michael.
Yeah, so for me, this is actually the most important or most interesting question to me on this panel. Like, what KPIs do you use to prove that your anti-cheat system is actually successful? So if I was in those seats, this is the one that I would be listening to the most. And truthfully, for every single organization I've been at, those KPIs are different. Tom's absolutely right. At the end of the day, I think the most important KPI is player sentiment. You can have the most secure game in the world, but if players don't feel like it and the discussion is around how the game doesn't feel like it's fair, and players have an unfair advantage, then it doesn't matter how good your anti-cheat is. You kind of failed there. And vice versa. Your anti-cheat strategy could be failing, but if players don't feel it and they feel like they're still having fair matches, then at the end of the day, does it really matter? The issue with that KPI is it's an extremely laggy indicator. Like collecting player sentiment, frankly, sucks. You have to scrape a lot of forums. You have to, infiltrate a bunch of Discords, and not a great experience. So the more realistic KPI we use is appeal rates and then feedback from our threat intelligence. So appeal rates are a good estimator of how accurate your detections are. The problem with appeal rates is if you want low appeal rates, you just don't ban players. But then you get the cheaters are playing, so it's only one half of the yin. You need the other yang. And the threat intelligence is the one that we internally like to brag about, because it's always fun to compare how expensive a cheat is to procure, because usually the availability of a cheat and how expensive it is tells you how difficult it is to crack or hack. And usually the way you celebrate, a good anti-cheat strategy is if a cheat vendor just decides to quit because the game is too difficult to attack, or more importantly, not profitable to attack. So yeah, our KPIs are player sentiment, appeal rates, and threat intelligence feedback.
Fantastic. And I guess with that monitoring and all the feedback coming in from the various corners of the market, there's of course always this question of what do you do with immediate, sort of decisive cheat actions, and how do you respond to that? So the question then is how do you integrate, let's say, these immediate requirements seamlessly into your studio's continuous integration and deployment pipeline, and basically minimizing, in other words, disruptions to your development schedules. Michael, if you want to kick it off. Tom, I should say Tom, yeah.
Well, I'll take it then.
And,
No, so I mean, Embark Studios is a very young studio, right? It's like, well, young at this point. It's 8 years, I guess. So it's still preteen. But we believe in fast iteration, and we've always believed in very fast iteration. Like we built with relatively small teams. The studio early on in its existence invested a lot in like our build pipeline and CI and workflows and all that kind of stuff. So we ship a new client every 3 weeks for the finals. For our creators, I think right now it's 4 or 5 weeks. But between a change in Perforce for me, if I make a commit, I can see that live in like less than 3 weeks, right? So when an exploit is found, we can relatively quickly make a fix for that and get it live within 3 weeks. And quite honestly, between us making a commit to Perforce, cherry picking it over to a release branch and making a new build and shipping it, that could be done within 24 hours too. So if shit hits the fan, we can basically get a fix out in hours or in days at the best, I guess. So, I guess for any company that wants to be agile in this particular space, it is good to invest in your pipelines first before you start making a game.
yeah, and then Andy, as a vendor into the industry, how do you deal at that from the Nuvo side?
Yeah, so whenever we design a new solution, we try to make it as easy as possible for our clients to integrate. And for us, this usually means that most of our products, the basic protection can be integrated on a binary level. So no source code integration required, all going through the binary. This is working via a small CLI that's integrated into the build pipeline, and then every build that's popping out is automatically protected. Why do we do that? We want smaller game studios without a dedicated security team also to be able to implement proper security. And for bigger studios having security teams, we also have APIs available and SDKs to integrate the solution however they need it for the specific game that they are working on.
Super, thanks. Yeah, and that raises an interesting question, sort of what is the developer's role in making a good anti-cheat solution? And what must vendors provide to achieve a streamlined integration? Tom, maybe you can reflect on that.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't know. There's a talk later this week about our creators and how we pivoted and stuff like that. It's going to be a great talk, by the way. So for us, when we started with our creators. So early on in the development of our creators, we had no idea what we were doing for anti-cheat. And so I just decided to integrate all of them. So I made an integration of ESC, BattlEye, SART, ACE, Denuvo, and a bunch more. And in the process, I basically, created this whole framework for Unreal to allow us to switch between them and stuff like that. And that actually turned out for the finals to be a very interesting use case, because when we decided to switch from EAC to Denuvo, we could literally just make both plugins enabled and then have a slider where we could say like, okay, give 20% of the users Denuvo and the rest EAC, and next week we're gonna roll it further out. And so, that framework has helped us a lot, and it's been great.
Super, thanks. Yeah, so we talked a bit about the development and the strategy and the setting up the system, the running and the operation of the system. Let's switch now to the outcome, and it's basically the player trust and the fair play side. The question is here: how do you jointly ensure that the highest levels of security deployed ultimately translate into a trusted, zero friction experience for the vast majority of honest players? And of course, that's a feisty question to ask, but Michael, maybe if you can kick it off.
Thanks, Niels. So on New World, Throne of Liberty, and Lost Ark, our client-side anti-cheat solution was from Easy Anti-Cheat. I don't have much to say about how they make that zero friction. I think they're doing a good job, because once you click install on Steam and play the game, in 99.99% of cases, I'd say that's fairly trouble-free. What we're in control of and responsible for is making sure that those innocent players don't get false positive bans. And that comes from a pretty sophisticated system we built internally called Risk Reactor, and it combines 3 sources of data before we even make the decision to ban a player. So it takes a look at their client-side telemetry, their server-side telemetry, and then their behavior analytics. When we only see one vector lighting up and the other 2 are quiet, that's a pretty good indicator that we need to go and manually investigate. Either the player is doing something suspicious and it's not enough of a signal in the other 2 vectors, or even worse, maybe one of the vectors is acting up and needs to be tuned. However, when 2 or 3 of those vectors start acting up, that's a really strong signal that we actually have a legitimate detection and we can issue some kind of penalty to this player. So yeah, for us, the zero friction experience comes from this system we built in-house that combines these 3 data sources and then allows us to make sure honest players are never penalized.
Yeah, no, super. Thanks, Michael. And Andy, maybe your reflections here.
Yeah, so to extend on what Mikhail mentioned, so especially the evidence part is, in my opinion, very important, because you already managed to pass the first hurdle. You have a player in your game. Now it's about you don't want to lose this player, and so every decision that affects the player experience needs to be data-driven, and you need to take educated decisions. Therefore, yeah, evidence is a big part here, and yeah, false positives, because false positives can not only or don't only harm that specific game where it's happening. Every one of us knows probably that anti-cheat solutions have a hard time out there with the communities from time to time, and every false positive also harms the anti-cheat public perception in general.
And sorry to jump back in. I just want to point out the importance of these systems being automated. Like across New World, Throne of Liberty, and Lost Ark, we're at over 100 million bans. That's a lot of burned Steam accounts, and you pretty much leave no room for a manual process here. And with that volume of bans, like you're bound to hit an innocent player somewhere. And I just want to point out that the importance of having great moderation tools so moderators can come in and actually evaluate the appeal accurately is just as important as the decision that you made in the first place. In fact, I would even argue that if you were to invest into an anti-cheat ecosystem from scratch, start with the moderation tooling first, because that's going to drive a lot of your needs for what kind of information you need to surface to a moderator to make an accurate call. And once they can make accurate calls, only then consider even trying to automate the rest of the pipeline.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and that then brings us to the basically the question of when you talk about these enforcement policies, so bans, detection messages, etc. How do you make sure that they're communicated in a clear and to a large degree positive manner that reinforces the value of fair, competitive game environment? Tom.
Yeah, so in the finals we started showing messages in the game that, if a user gets banned or kicked out of a server, that the rest of the players in the server get a message like, hey, we kicked this user for unfair play. Kind of just reinforcing what people are thinking about their game at that point. For our curators, we took it a step further where, when we find a session that has a cheater in it, we actually compensate people. We actually call it the player compensation program. And we actually even email people with like, hey, we found a cheater and, you have been compensated whatever was stolen from you. And we've gotten enormously positive feedback on that.
Fantastic. Andy?
Yeah, I especially like how this cheating topic has become something game developers talk about, because this is a very important step into driving acceptance. People want to read about that they are reporting players and other things, that this information there is action taken according to this information. And so what we have seen working best is clear communication, especially on the KPIs. So telling your community what is the goal you have with your enter cheat solution, and where do we stand, and what actions you want to take in future to reach the goals that you have set. Also, banning or sanctioning. It's not always about just banning the person. So we've seen for multiple games where they have very creative ways of sanctioning people, like shadow bans or putting all cheaters together. Also this, and then talking about this, your decisions there and what you're doing there publicly helps a lot to drive acceptance and make sure people really see that these enter cheat solutions have a positive impact on the game.
Super, thank you. And when we then think about the future of fair play, what upcoming technologies, obviously AI, machine learning or other, for real-time, let's say, detection, will allow the industry to achieve a state where anti-cheat is actually always effective and completely transparent to the legitimate users? Tom, if you want to kick that off.
Yeah, I mean, obviously ML and AI-based detections is kind of where it's going. We partner a lot with external vendors like AnyBrain, for example. We use them a lot. Certainly we assign specifically AnyBrain to users in our leaderboards and stuff like that to get extra fraud detections based on mouse movement, macros, and all kinds of stuff. Very effective solution. And then, other than that, server-side telemetry is absolutely a key to detecting all kinds of behavioral stuff. Whether that's heuristics or ML-based, that doesn't really matter, but the data that you get from your servers is absolutely key. And then for us, I mean, we believe in supporting our community no matter where they play, including Steam Deck and Proton, very important platforms for us to support. And the kernel-level anti-cheat is just not a thing there. So you have to go with other solutions. And so our focus for the future, and even today, is definitely more in the telemetry and ML-based solutions.
Thanks. Andy?
So I also believe that behavioral detection, AI, ML is a big step going forward. But another big thing is also hardware and operating systems. So making sure that the currently very open platform as a PC, where the user has full access to everything, is getting more secure over time. So we've seen it with Windows 11 enforcing secure boot. Now also enter-cheat solutions are able to enforce it. Only problem here is, it's not that widespread yet, but this will come. And so these hardware features like secure boot, TPM, IOMMU, which will hopefully defeat the whole DMA problematic at some point, once they are broadly available at an acceptable rate that they can be properly enforced, this will also be a big change in the enter-cheat space.
Yeah, we've thought about applying those things more virally, where if you've ever played our game with secure boot on, you can never play it without it off and stuff like that. We haven't done that yet, but those are kind of ideas that we're playing with. Because, at the end of the day, right now, with our player base, about 80% has secure boot on, the other 20% does not. But you can't really say that those 20% are people that are cheating, so it's difficult. And certainly for the finals with the current player base, it's just not viable to tell them, it's like, you have to have secure boot on right now, because that would just cut our player base in half or something like that. So it's commercially not a good idea.
Also worth mentioning here is what I'm really looking forward to is how the cheat developers are in future trying to maintain the business model. Because if these features are widely available, they need to find exploits and stuff. We already see that with Riot Games, who have seen in the cheats that they are using vulnerabilities in the IOMMU feature to bypass the requirement for that, and develop their cheats. So we will see in future, once these vulnerabilities are solved, what else they find and how they evolve, and then again, how do anti-cheat solutions evolve according to that.
Super clear, thanks. Shifting gears a little bit, I'd like to move to more the social ecosystem, so basically the community and the influencers. And there is, of course, and let's start off with that, a paradox in the sentiment. And the question here is then, how do you navigate basically the communication challenge, on the one hand, of justifying the high privilege technical solutions, like kernel-level access, to a community that simultaneously demands aggressive protection and increased data privacy? Handing that off to Tom first.
Yeah, this is, oh my God, I can't even believe what I've written down here that I should say, but I probably won't say this. But I would say that, the sentiment is created by a small vocal minority, right? You have the majority of people just want to play your game, and they're going to be quiet and silent, and they just enjoy playing the game. But then there is obviously a group of like 20 or 30 people that are super, super vocal on Reddit or Discord or whatever, and they create this sentiment. And so this is the same thing for kernel-level anti-cheat, right? We know all like how many people there are in the world that say like kernel-level anti-cheat is like absolutely shit. There's privacy, 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 and stuff like that. But I mean, what incentive do I have to start spying on you and see what websites you're browsing and all that kind of stuff? So, And certainly for us, like, because we are not building our own kernel driver, we're using another product. If we were to find out that a kernel driver would do something like that, we would instantly be stop being their customer. So for me, it's a little bit of a topic that I'm passionate about screaming about, but I don't know. I probably shouldn't. Anyway, there's a couple of YouTubers that have a vendetta against kernel-level anti-cheat, and they create a lot of noise for us. But then you have cheaters that willfully disable literally every security feature on their machine to be able to cheat. And we've seen cheats that come with viruses, that come with Bitcoin miners, or they come with whatever else. And it's like, why do you do this to yourself? Only to be playing a game that you're not good at? It's like, why not just get good? So yeah, I don't know. It's yeah. I don't know. I mean,
it seems the perennial question, right?
Exactly.
Why not play a game that you're good at and
exactly.
go towards that? Andy, maybe you do believe what you wrote down.
I totally believe that, yeah. And one thing I wanted to extend on is trust into the kernel mode driver. The thing is, every kernel mode driver needs to be signed by Microsoft. And in order to get the approval by Microsoft, they do their due diligence. They check that you are a valid company, that your use case, why you need kernel access, is valid. And also on a technical level, they want to understand what you're doing. So, and they have the option to revoke your certificate. So there is a huge risk for a company to maybe not gather only the data that you really need in order to do what you want to do. If you do malicious things or gather too much data that you don't need, at some point Microsoft will find it out, they will revoke your certificate, and yeah, you are gone.
Yeah, understood. Let's talk a bit about influencers and then basically influencer impact. How do you strategically engage with these influencers, either as early warning systems or actually as partners in integrity, to ensure they reinforce the value of fair play rather than inadvertently amplifying the cheat hysteria. And you talked about it a little bit about the YouTube videos there, Tom, so maybe let's go to you for this.
Yeah, sure. I mean, influencers make or break your game these days. I mean, that's just how it is, right? If a big influencer is super positive about your game, you suddenly have 1 million customers because they have 1 million followers. But if they tear it down, you're done. So it's a sensitive and fragile topic, I would say, because obviously you can't just let them cheat in your game either. So, you know, a lot of it is a collaboration between the influencers and us. We talk with them, we set up extra requirements for them, so they have to play with Secure Boot and stuff like that, just to kind of, you know, make sure that they are safe, but we are also not encouraging them to talk in a way that encourages other people to cheat in our game, I guess. But it's, yeah, their impact is enormous. And yeah, that's just kind of it. If they make or break you.
Clear, understood. A fair warning. When we talk about fair play, and I guess when we talk about the integrity of a game, it's also good to look at the economic side of things here, and then much more the botting and fraud. And the question here is, how are you evolving your anti-cheat system to basically to distinguish between mechanical combat cheats, like aimbots, large-scale bot farms that don't harm the actual game experience or other players directly, but actually much more threaten the long-term economic health and server stability. Mikael, if you want to start there.
Thanks, yeah. So as I mentioned at AGS, all of our games are MMOs, and New World, Throne of Liberty, Lost Ark, and the number one issue we deal with is bots. It's not aimbots, but actual bots just go around and farm materials, and then even worse, fuel real money transactions, RMT markets. And that's where, instead of using the in-game store, you decide to go on some shady website and purchase there, probably using crypto, and then receive your goods in-game that way. These players are great because, one, they show a proclivity that they're interested in spending money in their game. They're just kind of giving you a hint that maybe the value you're providing them is not what they would expect. But getting back on subject, I kind of envy the bot developers because they genuinely have a really difficult problem to solve. You could write a bot that looks convincingly human. Maybe you could write 10 or 100 bots that look convincingly human. But in order for botting to work, you really have to do it at scale. You're not going to be profitable with a bot farm of 10. And as soon as you scale it up to 1,000, those patterns start to be easily identifiable because bots start doing the same thing. They start taking the same farming route, making the same farming decisions. And these bot farms that are operating at scales that are profitable are genuinely doing impressive work to achieve that. It's also fun and kind of easy to catch them. It's kind of like shooting fish in a barrel. So the main challenge we have with bots isn't actually catching them. It's easy to do. It's the response time. Can you catch them by the time they actually do damage to your economy? So one of the strategies we use is gating access to things like trade and auction houses until the later levels. And at least it gives us some time to collect telemetry, evaluate whether the account can be trusted or not, and make a decision. So I guess the one suggestion I would have is if your game does have in-game economies where players can trade items, and to an extent you can even consider ELO as kind of a thing you can trade. You can win trade with another player or boost another player for money. Make sure you gate the trade of those assets behind some bot detection or some account trust ratings. Yeah, I'm just trying to see if I missed anything else there. Yeah, and of course, like the goal is to get the detection window as low as possible, but the shorter your detection window is, the less data you have to work with, meaning you're increasing your false positive rate. So there's always a fine balance to work with. But a nice thing about gating your detection behind a requirement like you can't touch the auction house until you're level 40, you essentially can collect data all up all the way up to level 39 and then make the decision there. And you get the best of both worlds, where you can collect as much data as you want while still at the same time protecting your economy.
Thank you. Andy?
Yeah, so also at Denuvo we have realized that traditional kernel mode anti-cheat won't be the single source of truth going forward. So we also extended with a behavioral solution there. And I see anti-cheat as a toolbox. It's first thing is very important to understand or know what's your business model. So how is your game returning the investment? And then based on the business model, you need to be aware what kind of threats exist to your business model. So for MMOs, this could be, as mentioned, the in-game economy that needs to be protected there. For shooters, it's the traditional aimbots and ESP cheats, fighting games, macros, gameplay automation. And when you know the threats that you will see, you need to open this anti-cheat toolbox and find the right tools in there to tackle the threats that you're going to face with your game.
Thank you. I'll ask one more question, and maybe after that we'll open up the floor for your questions. So I'll ask one more to the panelists here, but if you do have questions, please do prepare them. Basically the last question is basically more on the larger and the more the unified integrity of things here. So to what extent do you view fraud prevention and account takeovers as core pillars of anti-cheat? And how does stopping fraudulent actors at the account level prevent the industrialization, basically, of cheating? Michael, if you want to take that.
Yeah, thanks. I won't touch too much on fraud prevention. All I can tell you is it's an incredibly important pillar, because if you're not doing fraud prevention, you'll get kicked off the Steam store. Don't ask me how I know that. But essentially, your platform is willing to tolerate a certain rate of fraud, and if you can't meet that benchmark, you'll get a very angry email from Valve. The account takeover one is a bit more interesting. So on Rainbow Six Siege, the account takeovers usually have really obvious harm, but it's short-lived. These are accounts that are sold for rage cheating, where you just want to go on a rampage at a high elo. Maybe you'll get a round or two in, and then you'll finally get banned. But in MMOs, account takeover is a huge problem, because now you have a source of gold farming that essentially has had a long time to establish a trust rating. And when a moderator comes to review that account, they genuinely have to make a difficult decision of, has this account been taken over, or is just a player playing weird for a few days? And with the advent of AI and a lot of machine learning models, a lot of these machine learning models don't respond quickly to immediate threats. And actually, that's a bad generalization to make. Specifically at AGS, our models value the lifetime of account significantly more than what you did the next day or the day after. So when you lose an account to takeover, essentially they get to bot for a few weeks before those signals become important enough for the AI models to pick them up. And yeah, of course, those accounts also include items of value. Some of those CSGO skins go for hundreds of thousands of dollars. And any player protections you can put in place to at least lock out trade until that account can be investigated is definitely appreciated by the players.
Okay, thanks, guys. Well, this is where we want to open the floor to any questions or comments or discussion that you may want to raise to the panelists here. There's a microphone up front here. All right, very good.
Hey guys, I run product security at Wizards of the Coast, and I have a question for you. Kind of touched a little bit on it, but more interested on not exactly anti-cheat directly, but things such as like game vulnerabilities or like code scanning, things that might give people a leg up into creating like cheats. Do you see the product security space and like anti-cheat developing like coexisting? Is it one and the same, or are they two separate disciplines?
I can take a stab at this one. So from my experience being offensive side, so building cheats, the majority of vulnerabilities are game agnostic. They usually come from the game engine that the game is using. So if an Unreal Engine game is out there, you usually have like a ready toolkit of how to attack that engine. I think the question you're asking is, should like pen testing and exploit discovery be part of building that product? Was that the question? And I would absolutely say yes with a huge asterisk. It completely depends on your game's revenue model. So if you have a non-competitive game where there is no ELO and players are just playing for fun, let's use Borderlands as an example. Like the best anti-cheat strategy for Borderlands is just get better friends. Like if you're playing with friends that cheat, just play with friends that don't cheat. So would I recommend they spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to pen test it? It's like probably not. You can get away with it. But if you're a competitive shooter like Rainbow Six Siege or let's say Apex Legends, and you're having remote server exploit vulnerabilities, get yourself on HackerRank, HackerOne, get those third parties in there pen testing this thing, get the bug bounties going, build up your internal knowledge so your developers start thinking like attackers. And when you're pitching your product, like part of your revenue model has to be tied to how much of your revenue is at threat due to cheating exploits and bugs and all that.
Yeah, we actually run a bug bounty program at Embark, so we hope people pen test us, and they do. I mean, obviously, there's been a lot of Reddit posts about exploits in our creators and stuff like that, and we close them off. But yeah, it's an interesting side show to anti-cheat, I would say. It's not something that we focused on in the past. Although when we started with Unreal, we knew about all the SDK generators and stuff like that. So that was one of the first things that we tried to obfuscate and protect against, which I would say everybody should be doing.
Wise advice. Any other questions?
Hello. We're working on software that, amongst many other things, has relevance for anti-cheat. And one of the questions we're looking into is aimbots. It's indicative of other problems similar to it. As we haven't currently found a 100% guaranteed solution to aimbots, aside from perhaps kernel-level anti-cheats, which from our research have been told are good but not perfect. But if you can, from what we've researched, kernel can help. Analyzing player behavior helps. Analyzing the data, security signatures. But at the end of the day, looking for tampering of the binary of the client can help. Trying to prevent that. We went to a talk about where iOS apparently has some tools to help with that, and perhaps Microsoft. But at the end of the day, if they can get through the kernel, if they get through the kernel anti-cheat, if they can get through the tampering of the binary, they can actually find, you can obscurify the locations of memory and move those around, make that difficult to find. But if they can find it, they can modify it, they can get through the security for the packets, so you can use cryptology, but at the end of the day, all that cryptology is still on the client. If they can modify the client data, they can still get around that. And then, of course, the OS, and then the server side. But in the day, while there's a lot of things you can do, it still comes to a point of they can mimic a packet of data that says, I clicked there instead of there, and there's no fundamental way we found to verify that. It's like from the server side perspective, you receive a UDP packet is what we're working with. You could also do TCP, but in case UDP, it's like the UDP packet, the binary, everything checks that says, it says they clicked there. That's the best we can do. Is what extent is that accurate?
Okay, aimbots. Who wants to take an aim?
So I think you used a key word there. You start off by saying aimbots aren't solved. I would agree, and I would also say that no cheating thing is solved and will ever be solved. Because remember, the goal here isn't to get rid of all of aimbots and all of memory manipulation, speed hacks, and all that. The goal is to not make it profitable. Because if there's no demand or desire or will to create these cheats, then essentially the problem solves itself, so to say. Even if you have the most locked down system, like a PlayStation or an Xbox, there is still AI-based cheats that analyze the output signal. They find out where the enemy is, and they move your controller in the right way. So at the end of the day, there's always going to be some threat. The question becomes, can we make it so it's no longer profitable? It's no longer worth doing. And it really comes down to, like, a bad player with an aimbot looks like a great player without an aimbot. And that gray line will always be there. And it doesn't matter if it's drawn due to a Zim controller, an AI, or an injected DLL. The outcome is the same. The gray line is still there.
I totally agree with Mikhail here. So the aim is not to have 100% cheater-free games. Of course, the aim should be there, but it won't happen. It's simply not possible because we are operating in a hostile environment, the client machine. It's just about raising the bar. So try to make it as hard as possible to create the cheat in order to raise the price for the cheat, decreasing the amount of people who are investing into these cheats, and then with that, decreasing the amount of people cheating in your game.
I would also say that right now, most of the cheats that are being produced are not so human-like as people think they are. So obviously that's evolving, and that's kind of the future of where AI is going. But I would say currently a lot of these aimbots are still very clearly visible in telemetry server-side.
Good. I think we may have time for one more.
Howdy, my name's Dan. I'm an engineer for a game that operates exclusively on Roblox. I'm not sure if you know about Roblox, but we cannot introspect the client at all. We can't access their IP address. We can only kind of vaguely tell where they live. Obviously, anything we do on the client can be completely overwritten and patched out. I'm wondering kind of what your first instinct would be to do. Obviously, on the server, would it be analytics? Would it be heuristics? I'm kind of interested.
Yeah, so at that point, you're not only at the mercy of the platform you're running on, but you're at the mercy of the platform your mod is for, which is Roblox. So I would go on LinkedIn, find out Roblox's head of security, and yell at him to secure the
I've done that many times.
Yeah. And the second thing is you probably have to lean on server-side telemetry. Like, at that point, start collecting enough data from your game where you can start distinguishing between legitimate players and those acting suspiciously. And you're also at, like, the frontier of gaming. Like, very rarely are we in this scenario where we have to come up with an anti-cheat for a product that's within another product. The only other example I can think of is, like, StarCraft mods and Warcraft 3 mods back in the day, because they needed to save state from one map to another, and they had to, create little strings you can copy paste, and you could just modify those, and they never solved that problem. So TLDR, you're stuck between a rock and a hard place.
That's kind of what
Get
I
help
figured.
from your platform, and until then, good luck with your server-side telemetry.
Thank you very much.
Okay, I think that wraps it up. So thanks, Andy, Tom, and Mikael for being on the panel, and thank you for attending. Just want to highlight that there is an Erdetto mixer this afternoon, so if you're up for a drink after this and want to talk more to the panelists and more around the topic, by all means join us. That's happening just around the corner here at the W Hotel, Suite 3103. Yeah, look forward to see you there. I want to thank you. There's one more thing. I think I understand there's going to be an email sent out with a questionnaire in it, and I think we would all benefit, including yourselves, if you can fill those out. And then thank you. We'll be around here for a bit, probably outside, because there may be next section. And then do join us at the mixer. Thank you.